Former minister and founder of Something or Other Publishing, Wade Franson, is the host of Created in the Image of God, a series that examines the role of religion in society. From messianic returns to the emotive responses transmitted throughout our culture, Wade fearlessly addresses reality claims from all directions, objectively exploring their compatibility with Holy Scripture. Joining him are groundbreaking artist and podcaster Jacqueline Clare, whose focus on spiritual realism is summarized by the quote, "When we don't take the high road with our choices and miss the opportunity to develop spiritual qualities, we literally forfeit the purpose of our lives."
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Created in the Image of God show. We're here with Jacqueline Clare today, the author of Noble Beings. You all may have received the notice of Mark Tinsley. Mark Tinsley is a no-show at the moment. We have tried to connect with him. He was scheduled and planned, but as of right now, we do not know where Mark Tinsley is. We hope that he will be joining us here shortly and can speak to this topic from his perspective as in his theological studies and also as an Army chaplain. But in the meantime, we've been discussing how to dive into this topic from a slightly different angle. And given that Jacqueline is here and she's written a book for children, Noble Beings, we're going to talk a little bit about virtues and children from the perspective of the very title of this show, Created in the Image of God. Longtime listeners know where that comes from. It comes from the book of Genesis, where God created man in his image. But he didn't just create man, it says he created them, male and female. And on this show, we believe that those are biological beings, men and women, that have a divine spiritual purpose and a divine spiritual intent, and that it's part of God's creation to manifest his eternal essence through his creation, including the differentiation of a male and female of the species. And you have this whole story in the book of Genesis about the animals, each one having a companion, a male and a female, and Adam seeing that there was no companion for him, and then God created and gave the woman as a companion to him, and that this was God's intent from the beginning. Now, the show tonight was going to have Mark talking about how in our modern era, especially in the last few decades, with the acceleration of change and the acceleration of um, a new kind of morality, that men have been sort of on the defensive actually for many decades, but that this has increased to the point where today men are manifesting traits that are very different from what they were in the past. Many in society welcome this, but many see also a problem and a challenge. Thus the title, Where Are the Men of Courage? So I wanted to now invite Jacqueline to comment on her book, Noble Beings, from this perspective, because her book is designed to teach children about their essential nobility. Well, actually, let me just let Jacqueline tell about her book and explain it from that perspective.
Sure. Well, I think that's very fair that it is meant to help teach children about their essential nobility, their spiritual nobility. And really, the inspiration was the awareness that children are so incredibly receptive and that that's often very manipulated to sell things to them. And little children, are marketed toys, and then, they're marketed this idea of like being 10 or 11 or 12 or 13, and like when I'm 13 I'll have a phone, or like these images of what their progress through life is going to be and look like from a very materialistic and worldly standpoint. And I wanted to create some artwork that would help the children put that aspirational focus into spiritual things, to picture themselves. They're 5 years old, they picture themselves as a 7-year-old having a relationship with God, like having a sense of peace in that relationship. So that was really the intention, to give them that aspiration towards their own spiritual growth and spiritual connection. And As far as like any ideas of gender and that sort of thing, at the time that I put the book together, that wasn't quite the heightened conversation that it is now. But I did, for example, use a prayer from the Baha'i writings. And it's this like love filled prayer. It's very short, and we're referring to God as our beloved and like yearning for that relationship. And so for the image, I did a drawing inspired by Romeo and Juliet. Like it's like an obvious cultural reference. And it's a girl out on her patio and she's looking at the moon and the stars in this very like lovey, pose. But like she's praying to God as her beloved. So instead of directing that energy to some boy down the street, it's like learning to channel that towards God. And there's I used a passage, let deeds not words be your adorning. And so I thought, okay, well, deeds, how can I visually represent that? And I thought, well, action. You put it into action. So I did a little boy who's like an action hero, like things to help the kids understand, and hopefully parents have conversations with them so that they can like, oh, I want to be a boy of action, not just words. I want to like do things in this life. I think you're muted.
I put myself on mute because one of my own kids, I heard them in the background. So my son, Caleb, he's going to turn 12 in just a couple of days, and we've had him in karate where he's been getting a lot of action. He's now a brown leader, and he will become a black belt if he gets through the various challenges. So and I have a daughter as well, Zoe. So we have very much tried to work with our children and encourage them. But one thing we started doing very early was get involved in something called the Virtues Project. And for a period of time, I was a member of the Virtues Project International Association Board of Directors. And this had a very prominent female emphasis. It was one of the leaders was a woman, and there were probably I don't know, maybe seven women on the board and 2 men. And so it was very much, and the women were the ones who had been most involved over a period of time. I was a newbie, right? I came to it and joined the board because of my background in strategic planning. And the board wanted to put together a strategic plan for the advancement of the project and to achieve various goals and whatnot. But the board was very virtues led, right? So each board meeting, we would pick a virtue that would guide us through that particular board meeting. And one of the things I help do is, well, because there are like 100 different virtues. And so rather than move through all these virtues, let us establish for the year certain virtues that will guide us throughout this whole year for what we need to accomplish this year. And I was very struck by how the virtues that were suggested were what, to me, from my perspective, being a male and perhaps in some ways an alpha male, a mover and shaker, wanting to get things done and build things. These virtues that were suggested struck me as what I would call the soft virtues versus what I would call the hard virtues. Now, I don't know if anyone else can relate to that. It's not any official term. It's just my own perception as very much a male, right? A testosterone-led being versus an estrogen-led being, right? And the virtues that were suggested were joy, right? Acceptance, tolerance, love, kindness. Very important virtues. But the virtues that I wanted were accountability, perseverance, action, right? And these were not welcomed by the women on the board, even though from my perspective, having been brought in to help drive a strategic plan that would achieve certain goals over the course of the year, these were things that I felt were needed to move the organization from where it was, which was stagnant, wheel spinning, floundering. That's why I was brought in, because they were really in trouble. And the input that I had was very much resisted. And I remember comments like, well, if I'm not experiencing joy, then I want no part of it. And obviously that's true. But what about your responsibility and your accountability to accomplish something, whether you personally feel joy in that moment or not? Right? So anyway, my point being that there's and in the Baha'i faith, and we're both Baha'is, you have this analogy of the two wings of a bird, the male and the female, the two wings of one bird. And I've often said, if you have two left wings, the bird's, if it can fly at all, it's just going in circles. And the same would be the case if it were two right wings. You can't take the right wing of a bird and put it on the left side of its body. It won't work. And vice versa. So those are thoughts that drove us as we worked with our children and introduced the virtues. Now, as a male, I obviously need to be balanced and have my rough edges, balanced by those other virtues, maybe the soft virtues. And I've chosen this year to focus on kindness as the one that I most need to incorporate into my life. But Jacqueline, how in your opinion, have we gone too far, right, in society that has been very much focused on, let's say, girl power? I hear all the time, having both a boy and a girl, I hear all the time things being said about girls that you are not allowed to say about boys, right? Society as a whole and adults referring to girls in a way that you're not allowed to refer to boys. Girls can be celebrated and put forward. Now, there in other societies, it's the opposite, right? You have very paternalistic, or what's the word I'm looking for, patriarchal societies in which boys are elevated and women are put down. But here in America and in Western society, have we gone too far in one direction?
Yeah, I think that we have. I think that what you were describing about the virtues that you wanted to advocate for in this group, and the virtues that a lot of your colleagues who were women wanted to advocate for, it really highlights for me the notion that I think is at least worth considering, the wings of a bird, that those virtues that are more instinctual for women, the kindness, the caring, the nurturing, the soft ones, which have a place, that those are so fundamental and necessary for early life. Like, it is obviously women who bear the children, but they are also the nurturer that takes these like very, very delicate creatures, these little baby humans, and helps guide them to a certain level of maturity. And then I think at some point, maybe like 7, 8, the children start to need to move to the masculine energies. That's when they're, they can stand, they can walk, they're competent little beings, and they need to start getting more of that sunshine from fathers and men, and they need to learn perseverance and integrity and that sort of thing, and not be overly coddled. The virtue I would advocate for, and I think I have good backing for this one, is truthfulness. In the Baha'i faith, there's a passage that says that truthfulness is the foundation for all human virtues. So anything, love and kindness and friendship, those will not stand if they aren't on a foundation of truthfulness. And same with perseverance and integrity and all of that. But I think that perseverance and integrity, etc., those tougher virtues, I think those really call for a truthfulness. Truthfulness is kind of rugged, I think. And that's really the one that we're told is the foundation.
Interesting so thank you very much. I very much agree with you. Interesting that you refer to it as rugged. Is that always true, or is it because of a way in which it's been used, perhaps inappropriately, or is it because society today has gone so far away from it that it appears that way?
I think truthfulness is hard, and it isn't just like, having to express a discomfort with someone else, and that can be rugged and tough sometimes. I think it's really challenging with ourselves. So that's what I mean by rugged. It doesn't have to be like aggressive or coarse or anything, but just that it calls forth something in us where we have to look honestly at things. And I do think that our culture is not supportive of it. We're, we say like, well, like whatever, your thought is your reality, or it's your truth, or whatever, which is all just endorsing fairy tales. And you probably know this way better than I do, but it's my understanding that in Greek, that there is no word for reality. There's only truth. Like it either is or it isn't. It isn't like my reality, your reality, reality TV, like whatever things we've fabricated. So yeah, it's both. It's hard as an individual, and we're also in a culture that is not supportive of it.
So give me an example of how the culture doesn't support truthfulness.
Well, Wade, you made me go there. You're making me go there. Okay. Let the record
Yes.
show. Yeah. Well, and I say this with tremendous compassion for people who are actually struggling with this themselves or in their families. But I would say that the transgender movement, where it is demanded of you to refer to someone in a way that is inaccurate biologically, and like you could say like they're not accepting what is actually true, and you are forced to express something that is untrue in order to not be fired or not be labeled a jerk or whatever. That's one big
Okay,
one.
so yes, I did ask you to go there, and I wasn't even thinking about that issue, but that is probably, that's why I keep bringing that issue up, and why it keeps coming up on the show, not just because the title is created in the image of God, but yes, it's a fundamental denial of reality, and it empowers the person who in times past would have been diagnosed with a mental illness called gender dysphoria. It empowers the person who suffers from gender dysphoria to force everyone else to accept their confused state about who and what they are, and actually empowers them to force people to deny the reality and the truth that they see and that they perceive. And something that is
you not only have to accept it, you have to join them in the narrative.
right. And so yes, that does tend to undermine at a very powerful level the idea of truthfulness as a whole. If in society we are forced to accept that distortion of reality because of somebody else's subjective, internal, personal experience that objectively does not conform to reality. And I'm not saying that they should be mistreated, or that they should be disrespected, or that they should be forced into anything this way or that, but that the rest of society should be forced to that degree of accommodation. I'm reminded
It's a very strange scenario, because it's one thing for people to suffer with this, and 10 years ago I was very I would definitely use whatever pronoun I thought the person wanted to go by, or that sort of thing, when it was like an occasional rare event and obviously this person's struggling. Now it's such a trend. Like there's such a push. I never could have imagined that it would get to this point. And I can't believe that this many people are just organically coming to this or struggling with this. So it isn't just like that you have to accept this false situation, this false reality, it's actually being shoved in our faces very aggressively.
Well, I'm going to take a quick break there, not because of the topic needing, but it's time. And we're going to actually air an ad for your book, Jacqueline. And we're going to encourage everyone to check in the chat that's watching, to provide comments, input. And as our regular listeners know, at the end of the evening, one comment will be selected, and the person who delivers that comment will be given a copy of the book of the evening, which is your book tonight, Jacqueline. And so you have the honor of being the one to pick your favorite comment. So we'll go to that ad, and then everyone watching, please do chime in, provide your comments and thoughts, and maybe you'll be the lucky winner of the book of the evening.
Bursting with joy on every page. An illustrated handbook of spiritual truths to help children learn lifelong gems of guidance, who we truly are, how to live, how to pray, how to treat others. Enjoyed by children and families around the world, inspiring meaningful conversations, powerful self-images, good habits, devotion, courtesy, truthfulness, friendship, Noble Beings Spiritual Handbook for Children of all ages, a special collection of wisdom from the Baha'i writings, illustrated by spiritual realism painter Jacqueline Clare, empower children of all ages to be the noble beings they are meant to be. Available in hardback, paperback, and ebook on Amazon.
Wonderful. I loved I loved a number of those images, but I saw the boy with truthfulness establishing a foundation for something.
Yep. Yeah. And also the title of the book, noble beings. I did consider joyful beings, because there's a Baha'i prayer that mentions that. And I thought, no, I think children have got that one down pretty well usually. And so I wanted to speak to another aspect of their nature.
Thank you. So I don't want this to become, a deep dive into the whole gender dysphoria issue, and I'm going to share a comment here from Fuad A. As a Baha'i, you are obligated to accept others even if you don't approve. Absolutely, and nothing that's being said here should in any way be deemed to indicate anything other than that. In fact, we literally just said something very similar to that. At the same time, the reality, the truth is that God created us male and female, and that is a fact of nature. That is a fact of the creation, and that those who are of different persuasions on this or any other topic also don't have the right to impose their version of reality on every other human being, right? We've said many times on this show that religion must inspire and not coerce. And everyone has a religion, whether they are Jew, Christian, Muslim, Baha'i, Hindu, or atheist, secular humanist, whoever you are on this planet, you have some kind of belief system that you ascribe to. Even if you're an anarchist, that's the belief system that you ascribe to. And none of these people have the right to impose that on the rest of humanity.
I think that's a great point. I would actually, just for the sake of being a monkey wrench here, I would actually push back a little bit just to be the devil's advocate. And I think in general, no matter what you do in life, you should do it with grace and kindness and tact. Like, all of these virtues matter. and you use them all, in varying degrees when needed. However, you could argue that it is a lie. It is an outright lie that a boy is not a girl, and we are told in the faith that is referenced here that kindness should not be shown the liar, the tyrant, or the thief. And I'm not saying we should not be kind to anyone who's struggling with this. I'm just being the devil's advocate that we are not to just accept and go along with falsehoods because we don't want to disrupt unity or hurt people's feelings.
Since we're on the topic, I'm gonna show one more quote here as well from Sabrina Laumer. I like the term used by Cliff High that supporting these victim mentalities, such as defending trans, is a form of Munchausen by proxy. Now, I'm not exactly sure what Munchausen is. I know what proxy is.
I know what Munchausen is, or my understanding. It's like those very sad situations where, like a parent will get some sort of social clout from their child being in the hospital or being sick or something, and then it becomes like a very ill situation where the parent is actually making the child sick to maintain that status
and beyond. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So I want to then and now I lost the thought where I was going to go with this, but I wanted to show Sabrina's comment.
By proxy, that what you were going to comment on?
No, it was it had to do with your comment that evildoers must be challenged. Yeah, so right, I want to take this in a different direction. So in the Baha'i faith, since we're talking about a Baha'i perspective on this, in the Baha'i faith, one of the mandates that's been spread right now, mandate is perhaps not the right word. I apologize if that's.
It's so sexist. I can't believe you said that.
I realized it had the word mandate. So one of the
It's fine, Wade. It's fine.
So is that we should be growing in our understanding of the role of the individual, the community, and the institutions. Now, on the topic of kindness and even forgiveness, yes, we as individuals must always be kind. We must always forgive. Even if someone has done violence against you, you are required by spiritual law, by divine edict from God and all of his manifestations, to forgive those, even to love our enemies. But that is only possible when the community plays its role, which the community has the role to stop evildoers and to punish them. Right? So I love going back to the Bible on this because of Jesus' three primary statements of turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, and give somebody the shirt off your back. Where in each of these cases, the individual is required to do that. But if somebody else takes advantage of the person who's doing that, they have recourse in the law. And Jesus would have fully expected them to take recourse in the law if they're being taken advantage of and victimized in so doing. And I've explained these on previous shows. I'm not going to go into what each of those examples means, but we can only show kindness and tolerance to people who are essentially doing crazy things or evil things if and when society as a whole is also playing its role and our institutions are playing their role. But what's happening on this issue of trans, right? It is part now of the medical industrial complex who is targeting our children and large sections of the population for purposes of medical profit. There are examples of how those who stand to make billions of dollars off these medical treatments are advocating and pushing for the adoption of these procedures. and the encouragement of same. And others, again, who have these perspectives, who want to enforce it on others in the name of safe spaces in our schools, where a safe space is one in which the teachers are forbidden to tell their parents what's happening with their child at school. Because in this scenario, the danger to the children is coming from the parents, obviously, and the safe place for the child is in the schools. So the children have essentially been kidnapped from the parents, and the school is having their way with them and keeping what is happening from the parents, because the parents are perceived as the aggressor or the danger for the child.
Yeah.
And
We just
again,
got
so
a very
the individual, the community, and the institutions all have a role to play, and we've all gone down this rabbit hole of accepting an alternate reality in which one individual's perception has to become a societal mandate.
And I think some of those qualities of the community and an administrative infrastructure playing its part to essentially allow individuals to be softer and kinder, because there is more of this actual safety in the integrity of the structure. Yeah, this is a tough question. Those are sort of the more masculine energies, right? The law, the punishment, the justice, it's not mercy and softness and love. So I think that's where the wings of the bird that you were talking about, that we need that balance of those strong, those tougher virtues, whatever you called them, to allow us to be softer. I would like
let
to
me just comment real quick. I don't know that I would agree 100% with the characterization of that particularly. Strength, there are different kinds of strength, and women are strong, but traditionally, yes, just you wait till dad gets home, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the order as opposed to the emotion is, yeah. Okay, so this is a very challenging question nowadays. Therefore, is it kind to refer to a transgender with what they want to be referred to as? So, I can only answer personally my opinion. Once upon a time, I would have said absolutely yes. Like, I would want to make that person feel as comfortable as possible, because I have genuine compassion for that predicament. Now that it is being so pushed socially, and I think a lot of people who actually don't even have body dysmorphia are taking that very dangerous path, because they've been sort of convinced through their social milieu or something. I think it's getting very dangerous, and I think the world needs people to say, you know what, I love you, and I'm not going to play along with this. I'm not going to play. So that's a challenging one. What do you think, Wade?
I would tend to agree. I think there are lawsuits now winding their way through the courts of children who, in a time of adolescence and confusion and change, felt encouraged or even pressured to go down this route, felt that they were lied to that they were lied to in the gender affirming environment, right? So let's take that term, gender affirming. If you are biologically a male and you declare yourself to be a female, gender affirmation would say, yes, you are a female. But is that true gender affirmation? Aren't you really a male? And in this gender affirming environment, the messaging was that we can help you. We can help you transition from being biologically a male to becoming female. And there are procedures that we can give you, and there are hormone blocking treatments, and children have been led down this path, and they are now suing those who led them down that path. And they are suing because those people who should have been kind to them were harmful towards them. So I would answer this question with a question: is it kind to refer to a person in this state with what they want to be referred to as? Is it dangerous? Is it evil? Is it harmful? This is the debate psychologically, and I think you can go do research. There are various countries now that are coming to the conclusion that no, the science on this is being shown to be in doubt, disputed, and even incorrect. And certain nations are backing off of what was previously a gender affirming approach. Entire nations are now saying, I think Sweden is one. I don't have the facts in front of me because we weren't planning to necessarily go down this path in this way. But having said that, I'm going to say we're about as deep into this as we can be, not because I'm afraid to tackle it, but because we're not really prepared to speak with facts on some of these issues. And I think it would be better if we planned a segment to go into this in detail and bring in some of those examples from where science is trending to answer this question of FWADs. Jacqueline, what are your thoughts?
Sure. It's a cool way to enter tonight's topic of where are the men of courage.
Well, yes, we definitely will. We've got an article that we're going to review, but I think we're going to, at this moment in time, take another commercial break, and we're going to re-announce an anthology of cultural journalism. And we don't have Daniel here with us, but we're actually going to be launching another show around cultural journalism, whereas this one has religion as its basis, created in the image of God. Cultural journalism will not have religion as a foundation, but rather it will be out there more in a scientific and non-religious way, looking at journalism in a different way. Anyway, I'll play the ad. It will encourage you to contribute to this anthology if you have an interest. So here we go.
Your story has the power to start a movement. Journalism is more than a tool for broadcasting news. It's an important way of fostering meaningful cultural relationships that create tangible change in our society. With our anthology Cultural Journalism, you can now do your part and make your mark. From expert writers to passionate amateur, everyone has a story to tell. Our aim is to promote equality, empathy, and create a safe space for different perspectives and interpretations of the world around us. Come join us today and break free from the toxic news cycle. By submitting your story to Cultural Journalism at info@soupllc.com.
I'm going to go ahead and share a QR code here. If you're interested in submitting your perspective to the Cultural Journalism Anthology, then you can scan this barcode and it'll take you right to the page where you can do so. We also showing a live sale here of somebody buying one of our books, which is cool, from watching the show. We're very grateful to that. I want to just wrap up this topic as soon as I can remove that QR code by sharing one last comment, because I really like Sabrina's perspective on this, because I think there's a lot of truth to it. It's again in two parts. Sabrina says that it is selfish to make yourself feel virtuous by defending delusions. There is a lot of virtue signaling that goes on in the name of tolerance, in the name of all of the ideologies and the modern religions. You know, virtue signaling has always been a factor. When we were hypocrisy in religion historically in a Christian nation, we kind of know what that looks like. Go back into the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s, and the moral majority. And there's lots of virtue signaling in the name of Christianity and religion. But modern virtue signaling takes a different, it aligns you with the current religious and moral thought, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that it is virtuous. What's weird is when you're virtue signaling about something that's not even virtuous, right? That's really the nature of Fuad's question. So, Jacqueline, I don't know if you have any last comments on that topic before we move on to the article, which I'm going to be pulling up here in a minute.
No. You might want me to. Yes, I do. I'm really glad that we talked about this. A couple people commented this is a difficult one to broach, and that's very true. But I think we need to be talking about it because we have to look out for our children. I never would have thought that this would have become a trend, and it really is a trend. And we have to look out for the young ones so that they don't go down a path that's really gonna damage their lives.
Yep. And we will definitely pick up this topic on a future show. Again, our bias here on this show is we're a religious show. We believe that we were created male and female, and that is the nature of creation. On the cultural journalism show, we'll have other perspectives on that, and we welcome having those perspectives and having those discussions. So I'm going to just try to switch here the technology and share my screen. And here we go. Share the Chrome tab. Bring that on. This is an article from the Discovery Institute. The fear of suffering is driving us crazy, right? This is definitely an aspect of the topic which we were just covering. The fear of suffering is driving us crazy. It's also, I believe, a factor in the main topic of the show, Where Are the Men of Courage? Because I'll just go ahead and read the opening quote here. The primary purpose of society shifted in recent decades from protecting innocent human life to eliminating suffering. That may seem like a small change in emphasis, but our suffering phobia has triggered a harmful societal neurosis that has both subverted human exceptionalism and undermined societal common sense. They go right into the transgender moral panic. So we cannot get away from this topic tonight, Jacqueline. So here we do have a couple of facts. So the Biden administration and the American Pediatric Association, among others, insist that children identifying as the sex they were not born should receive drastic interventions such as hormones and puberty blocking and top surgeries, i.e. mastectomies in girls ages 12 to 17. Occasionally, gender dysphoric children are even subjected to bottom surgeries, genital mutilations that result in a lifetime of sterility and sexual dysfunction. California has been so corrupted by this ideology that it passed a law making itself a gender-affirming sanctuary state. So then it talks about euthanasia. 3 countries permit organ harvesting to be conjoined with euthanasia down a very slippery moral path. It goes on to talk about animal rights. I want to scroll down to one of the core points here. Eliminating suffering is impossible. It leads to ever more extreme distortions of decency and a collapse of public policy rationality, which ironically can cause the very evil that suffering abolitionists yearn so desperately to prevent. So my perspective on this is that, is it even good or right to have the goal of eliminating suffering? And suffering in this case to be the discomfort that somebody feels related to any one of these issues. Isn't suffering a part of life? Isn't adversity a necessary part of becoming a mature adult, of understanding and really being able to experience compassion for other people. What's your take on all of this, Jacqueline?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we need to teach people and encourage them and empower them and train them to be strong and to know that suffering is part of life and that you will get through it, and that in those efforts you grow in your capacity and the richness of your life. I think we should take a completely different approach to suffering. It isn't eliminating it, but learning the lessons from it and learning to overcome it.
Well, and there's suffering and there's suffering, right?
Sure.
So I'm of an older generation, right? And we used to have this term referring to children that you could spoil your children, right? I don't know if that was a common term in your generation, but the children could be spoiled,
Yeah.
right? And spoiling children meant encouraging entitlement, meant giving them whatever they wanted. One little common day example. No, you eat what's put before you on the table. This is not a food court. Our house is not a food court, right? There is a meal that has been prepared for the family, and you're going to eat what's on your plate, and you're going to finish what's on your plate. You're not going to throw it away because there are starving people in blank. I'm not even going to say the word, right? But children were taught these things, and if they turned up their nose and refused to eat, felt entitled to have different food, then, they were spoiled. This is one
Sure.
little example.
And that's such a powerful word. And I mean, I think that's in the Bible, right? The word spoil, spare the rod and spoil the child.
And that's actually not.
It's
but
not.
There's something. No, that's a. I'll actually look up the quote for you. But spare the rod and spoil the child is not in the Bible. But
Okay.
A general
Thank you.
concept similar to that is.
And I was really curious if it used the word spoil in the context of children. But spoil is such a powerful word because it means to let something go bad, for it to become rotten. If food has spoiled, it's unhealthy.
So here's the quote. Here's the quote that comes close to it. I'll find the exact quote, but my memory is kicking in here. The quote is, "Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it out."
Okay.
Which is interesting in the context of what we've been talking about. I'm not remotely suggesting applying that verse to the topic we were
Sure.
just previously
No,
discussing, but foolishness, they know what they want. They don't have life's experiences. That's again going back to the Genesis, pun intended, of this show, created in the image of God. That is the story of Genesis. Adam and Eve, the naive first humans, took of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, decided that they would decide for themselves what was right and wrong, rather than listen to God's guidance on the matter. They didn't trust that God would lead them down the right path. They listened to the whisperings of Satan that convinced them that God doesn't want you to become like him. You need to eat of this tree and then you'll become like God, knowing good and evil. And God doesn't want that. Well, God exactly does want that. And he knew all along that we would go that path, the school of hard knocks, as I like to call it, that we would decide to choose for ourselves, but that we would eventually come to our senses when we hit rock bottom. And repeatedly throughout human history, we hit rock bottom, and spoiled children eventually hit rock bottom, but or not always in this life. But we as parents would try to encourage our children to listen to common sense, to listen to the adult world, to learn, to go to school and learn to become a mature adult, and not be carried away by every childhood fancy and fantasy. I mean, there are Baha'i quotes about this too, right? What is that quote that you were referring to with gloomy or joy, rather? It comes from that quote about gloominess. Do you know that that quote offhand, Jacqueline?
Oh, the
You know the one I'm
prayer,
referring to?
refresh and gladden my spirit.
No, it's I am gloomy, make me I
No.
am I'll have to look that one up too now. Just give me a moment. Why don't you talk
Okay.
about something and I'll pull up that quote?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to comment quickly. So, the title of today's show that our original guest had wanted to explore, "Where Are the Men of Courage," was based on a news article, a very sad article. And I just wanted to comment on it a little bit. Do you mind if I give a little recap of the article? And
Please do. I think I may have pulled up the wrong article in my haste to
well,
find one.
I think that was part of the exploration you guys were going to take. But "Where Are the Men of Courage" was an article in the New York Post, I believe. And it was an opinion piece about the Uvalde school shooting several months ago and how there were police there, but they didn't go in for a long period of time. And it was all a very strange situation. And the opinion of the writer was saying that, you know, we criticize men for decades about, you know, toxic masculinity. And even I think it's the American Psychological Association has listed traditional masculinity as a disorder, you know, like stoicism and aggression and stuff as a disorder. So it was just saying, okay, you attack law enforcement morally for a couple of summers. You attack masculinity. Well, then this is sort of what you get, was the article, that the men aren't standing up to be valiant to go save the kids. And I can't really speak to that specific situation, but I do think it's true that, you know, we can't attack one wing of the bird. You know, we do need the qualities that men are strong in, and some of those are aggressive, and that's, you know, that's the protectorship and so forth. And another really sad point that the article made was that, you know, 20 years ago, however long it was, 9/11, a little over that, you know, we had first responders diving to their death, you know, to go save people, like extreme valor, to go run into these burning buildings to try to save people. And the really sad thing is, not only have we attacked masculinity and law enforcement, but the poor first responders of 9/11 have like so many health problems, if any of them are still alive. Like, they've been so mistreated. They have like lung cancers and stuff from the work that they did. So, like, insult to injury, like on top of it, even some of our generational heroes who demonstrated valor and protectorship, uh, frankly screwed over. And I just wanted to I wish that the author had even mentioned that, you know. So as far as like confusion about gender and all this stuff, also we've been really attacking men, and we have to pay the price for that.
Yeah, here is that article in the quote, I think, that you're referring to, from the American Psychological Association.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stoicism, competitiveness, dominance, aggression, anti-femininity, achievement, eschewal of the appearance of weakness, and adventure, risk, and violence. And sure, like violence, that's not good, but I mean, we need people to take risks, you know. It's sad that we've demonized this so much.
Well, and from my perspective, one of the issues, one of the big picture, long-term trends that's driving this is the incredible success of the American project, right? The incredible wealth that was built. And yes, we have problems. We have people who are too rich, you know, in a sense. And we still have poverty. So we've got extremes of wealth and poverty in this nation. But on the whole, the wealth that has been created by America, the United States of America, and the wealth on this continent, yes, through the exploitation of natural resources, but through also the goal to improve the quality of life and the establishment and systems and structures that unleash the potential of human beings to a degree and a standard never before achieved in human history, the rise of a massive middle class where every single American, even those from extreme circumstances, even those who are descendants of slavery, had the possibility and the opportunity to strive, the belief that they could improve their situation. Many of them, millions of them, working towards improving their situations, making their life better for their children, until perhaps falling into ideological traps that impeded their progress and slowed it down and stopped it and even reversed it. But on this continent, in this nation, the incredible wealth that was created has led to a situation where now this whole nation is like one large, gigantic, fatted calf just waiting to be slaughtered. And people are arguing over who gets to slaughter it and who gets to divide it up and give it out to everybody so that they can feast on it. People are no longer interested in continuing to grow the strength and the power and the wealth of this nation on this continent. There, John Kennedy, wasn't he the one that said, don't think about what your country can do for you, think about what you can do for your country? That has been completely and totally flipped on its head. So no, why would anybody want to take risk? There's enough out there to be had by everybody. I shouldn't have to risk anything. I shouldn't have to work for anything. I should be entitled to my fair share of the pie. I shouldn't have to help create it. I shouldn't have to face danger. I shouldn't have to face adversity. I shouldn't have to work in the sun or work in the cold or work in a job that I don't like, right? I should just be able to benefit from everything that people before me worked for and created. And if I can throw out moral virtue signaling by saying they've come by it by illegal means or by racist means or by inappropriate means, all the more reason why I should be entitled to a piece of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well said. Somebody asked if some of these qualities, if it's appropriate to link them to gender, and I think that's a fair question. It's a very, frankly, popular question. And we're all everything, right? Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I don't have, a degree of valor or, courage or strength, whatever we're sort of assigning to different genders. And you're working on kindness. Like, we should all develop all of the virtues and be balanced in our masculine and femininity as well. But if I am in a burning building, I want a man to come get me out of there. And if my children are in a school and there's a shooter, I don't want a cohort of women going in there. And not because they're moral character, it's because of their physical strength. And I think that there is a correlation. Women are, mothers and we breastfeed, and there's like a nurturing, gentle quality to that. And men have more muscle density. And so we need them to like go and defend us and exhibit acts of courage. It goes back to the biology.
Right. And so everything in moderation, right? So I would agree. Yes, absolutely. Well, no, I don't necessarily agree with the changing ideas part of this per se. In other words, it does. Yes, the changing ideas. I'm not a fan of throwing out babies with bathwater. I do, as a Baha'i, believe in progressive revelation, but that shouldn't be confused with progressive politics. And there are essential virtues and essential eternal truths. And there's an essential eternal covenant between humankind and God that doesn't change, that stays the same. And so we were created male and female, and that hasn't changed, and that intent is still there. But yes, men, I would agree 100%. Both men and women can exhibit feminine or masculine traits to varying degrees. Whatever masculine traits or feminine traits you want to declare, right? Courage, if that's a masculine trait, well, women should and could emphasize courage. Compassion, if that's a feminine trait, men could and should exemplify compassion. But to your point, no, men shouldn't believe that they can breastfeed or give birth, right? And
Right.
women probably need to recognize that on average, men are going to be able to lift more weight and reach higher up because in general, they're a little taller and a little muscular, stronger, right?
A
And
lot. Yes.
and in terms of sports, right? The whole gender issue there is that women are being pushed out of sports because men are now allowed to compete against women in sports, and that is an unfair advantage because there are physical biological differences. But again, a great comment and a great question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we have had quite a lot of robust discussions. I'm gonna play one more ad here, and then we're gonna come back. And Jacqueline, you're gonna pick your favorite comment of the evening, and we're gonna make sure that person knows that they won, and encourage them to send us their mailing address and get your copy of your book out to them.
Let us know if you want the book. Put in a pithy comment. There's still a few more seconds left.
In a world increasingly disoriented and lacking spiritual values, many are turning to religion as a source of inspiration and comfort. Each person chooses their individual path, and if there is one thing we are known for, it's providing a positive platform for diverse points of view, to provide each of us the opportunity to discern truth for ourselves. Something or Other Publishing is proud to announce the creation of Royal Falcon Press imprint to feature the unparalleled talent of multiple writers who will bring uplifting and thought-provoking contributions to the body of religious literature, offering current spiritual insights and practical solutions to the challenges we face. Let's grow together as one of the most substantial spiritual communities on the internet. Register and explore a new way to achieve universal wisdom and reinforce your faith with all the surprises Royal Falcon Press has in store for you. Scan the QR code or email us at royalfalcon@soupllc.com.
And I'll go ahead and display that QR code for just another few moments there. Royal Falcon Press is the religious imprint of Something or Other Publishing, and they are a sponsor of this show. And we have anthologies that you can contribute to. There are also opportunities for individual authors from any religious background to contribute to the body of literature on religion. So, Jacqueline, back over to you to talk about the comments.
Yes. Well, we had wonderful participation tonight. And so I'm really grateful for everyone. And, and again, we welcome disagreeing, agreeing, adding to. It's really awesome. I will say that Sabrina Lammer has been on a roll tonight, and I am going to choose her comment about it's selfish to go along with the delusion to make yourself feel better or virtuous, something like that. It is selfish to make yourself feel virtuous by defending delusions. So, and I will make sure that Sabrina Lammer gets a copy of Noble Beings.
Great. So, Sabrina, if you want to send an email to info@soupllc.com and provide us with your, hang on, I'm just typing it in the chat here so I can share it on the screen. And send an email to info@soupllc.com with your mailing address. We might also need your phone number. We'll probably ship this book to you from Amazon directly, and they always ask for a phone number on the delivery. So if you don't mind your mailing address and your phone number, we can get that book to you. So thank you so much, Sabrina, and thank you, Jacqueline, for awarding her that book. So any last minute thoughts, Jackie, as we are slightly into overtime already?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I hope people are inspired to be courageous in their lives.
Thank you. And thank you so much for filling in for Mark Tinsley. We'll try to reach out to him and get him back on the show at another time. I will share with you that next week we have the follow-up to Anne Marie Waters, in which we'll be having Imam Makai Salam back on to address some of the points that she raised as she discussed some of the challenges against Islam that she's discussed in British society in particular. So that should be a very interesting show. And as you said, Jackie, we like to share those different perspectives. And perhaps somebody would like to come on the show in the near future to share a different perspective on this whole issue of toxic masculinity, gender affirmation. Love to have a robust debate about the science and what's going on in different countries with this massive experiment in gender affirming care, even for children. So hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. Hope you'll tune in next week, and all the best until we meet you again.